Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Bouncing Back, the Personal Resilience Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome back to the show. With digital platforms becoming central to our lives, understanding and promoting positive social behaviors online is more important now than ever before. So in today's episode, we're exploring prosocial behavior in the digital age, how kindness, cooperation, and altruism play out in our online interactions and shape the way we connect and build communities. And today we're joined by Yvette Lau, who is an experienced mental health counselor currently based in Hong Kong, with experience working with youth, adults and families in multiple school and private settings. Yvette is also a registered counsellor with the Singapore Association of Counselling and a member of the Hong Kong Professional Counselling Association. So, hi Yvette, very warm welcome to you. How are you doing today?
Hi Marie, I'm doing great. Just excited for this podcast, and so thankful to be able to have this opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I'm really keen to have this discussion as well because I've always had the opinion that the online spaces can be such a good they can be such a good vessel for positive interactions and for educational learning. As in contrast to the popular belief that technology is just inherently negative and there's so much negativity online and harmfulness online, which is true. But I have always seen the brighter side of things with online spaces. But before we begin, could you give us an overview as to the various types of behavior that we do see online these days?
Well, I think we see all sorts of behavior online, right? As you've mentioned, there are positive aspects to online behavior. You'll see altruism, you'll see people giving gifts and donating and helping each other. There's, finding community, finding support. There are lots of wonderful online communities these days, and many of them are also for young people too. And many of my clients, they are also regular users and visitors of these communities. And there's been such a huge positive impact that these online communities have made in many of my clients and many of the young people's lives, many of their users' lives. But also we do see the negative impacts, right? Just go online to anything. For example, Instagram or YouTube, and you go to the comment section and you'll see so much hate sometimes, right? You'll see trolling and flaming things that you probably wouldn't say to a person if it was, to their face. And sometimes these things can be quite shocking. Sometimes these things are said with a sort of, I suppose, satirical humor that sometimes other people don't get. You'll see lots of this kind of behavior in any of the online platforms that allow interaction, right? Where people just talk about their opinions because it's a sharing platform. And sometimes it can be taken out of context or just misunderstandings happen. So I see that, yeah, the negatives sometimes can outweigh the positives, but I hope that, with everything that is being done, with more education and awareness about what can be done to promote more positive behavior online, that we'll see online platforms as being more engaging and being more helpful than not.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I have to say, as someone who is an avid user of the internet, I do see these hateful comments all the time. And sometimes they're just, they're targeted towards just random people sharing their achievements in life. And I have to say that I have to admit that I don't usually walk away unscathed. I get affected by it, being like, why are people so mean? But I would love to dive further into this discussion with you, and perhaps maybe get your thoughts on, what people can do to, be less affected by it when they see these things online, and also try and, engage in more pro-social behavior, or try to find a way to curate their algorithm into something that's a bit more positive. But before that, I would love for our listeners to get to know you a bit better. So this is a segment that we call Have You Met Yvette? And my first question for you is, what is your favorite book?
I've got to be honest, it's been ages since I read a book, but yeah, because I'm always reading articles. And but one of the books that I regularly go back to was one that I received as a gift years ago. It's this book, Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. And I go back to that, and I often reread that, because to me this story is really about humanity. And I just love how the author brings out so many emotions, right? That's not just tied to the main character Charlie, but through his journey, his transformation, how others around him are affected. And to me, that's beautiful, because that mimics life too, in a sense, right? That we're all interconnected, that life is the journey of life. There's always hope and love and loss, and and confusion, inclusion, exclusion, grief, acceptance, the whole shebang of emotions. So to me, this is a beautiful story, and it's so sad too. And I think it's been adapted in different movies and plays probably, but I really love the book, Flowers for Algernon.
That's beautiful. It sounds like it has so much depth to it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. And as for movies, have there been any that you've enjoyed recently?
So I have a son, and so a lot of our movies are now kind of taken over by naturally what he would like to watch. I think it was pretty recent. I can't remember where. I think, yeah, we watched it in the theater, but it was called The Wild Robot. And yeah, and I loved this movie because it was unexpectedly touching. I didn't expect to love it. I thought I would just go in and watch a movie, right? And my son didn't expect it too, because he thought it was a movie about robots. And it's so much more, it's so much more. It's about essentially this robot gets I don't know, marooned on this island, and then interacts with the wildlife there. And this robot has to learn how to navigate, right? the sort of life in that forest. And it's beautiful to watch because it's just observing, it's learning, it's accommodating and shifting, and it's not making any form of sort of like pre-assumptions to things. It just goes, oh, okay, so this animal does this, and okay, so that's the general thing. And then he sees something else, another animal behaving in a different way, and he's like, wait a minute, like, okay, so, and it's wonderful because I thought that's a little bit like how humans are in a way, right? When we we learn from babies, we generalize things, and then as we grow, we learn more, and life experiences just work on us, and it helps us to navigate life, really. So to see that this robot eventually um, develops really deep relationships with the animals it's living with, and also to one of the characters, it it adopts this little goose, I think, and it's just very beautifully written. There's so much love and compassion from this robot, right? Coming from this robot, and yeah, and I really love this movie, and I really love that it was made for kids to enjoy too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love when a movie does that. I think my most recent experience that's similar to yours is watching Planet of the Apes, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's
No, I
just
haven't.
yeah. Well, like it sounds like okay, it's just a movie about a planet of apes, I suppose, but it's so much more than that, and it has like basically everything that you described in there as well. There's It's a trilogy, so if you like that kind of thing, I don't know if you even have time for a trilogy, but highly highly recommend. And now I'm really into apes as well. But circling back to the robot movie, is that like the Wall-E of your son's generation, essentially?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, now that you've made that comparison, yeah, and he's watched Wall-E too. So that was also a wonderful movie, right? Because it really talks about like this generation that we're living in, and sustainability in the world, and compassion and empathy, just all of these wonderful um just, I think, fundamental skills, fundamental needs. Yeah, just I love it when movies are able to get you to think more deeply about what our roles are here, here on Earth, as well as just how we affect other people. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just thought that as you were describing the movie, I just felt like, oh, this sounds really similar, and I started thinking about Wally. And I'm having this moment right now of realization that there's another generation enjoying a different kind of robot movie that isn't Wally. So I love that for them.
Yeah.
But as for podcasts, are there any that you're listening to at the moment?
Oh, so the one that I find myself gravitating towards is Adam Grant's podcast. He's an organizational psychologist, and as far as I know, I think he has two channels, or at least there are two channels that I listen to. One of it would be the work life episodes where he discusses ideas about team culture, dealing with difficult situations, or like rivals at work. And I love this term that he uses in his podcast where he goes, how to make work not suck, right? And I think that's just basically us. Anyone who goes to work any day, it's just about that. It's just making work not suck, and just sometimes it's just getting through the day. So, um, So I love how he discusses all of these ideas, in his work-life episode. The other channel too would be rethinking, and in that channel he talks to celebrities, he talks to experts, and he brings up really relatable issues too. Like I think there's one about overcoming loneliness. His latest one is about imposter syndrome. And I resonate so much with that sometimes. And my favorite one is about this episode where he talks to Sarah Silverman, the comedian, and how they discuss the idea of showing kindness to the most unkind people, right, online. And she talks about how she diffuses situations with trolls online. And it's so funny because she talks about her take on how she plays an online sort of like first
First-person shooter.
shooter game. I can't remember what that game is now, but it's one of those games, and they're all like, and throwing F-bombs and this and that. And she's like, oh, we've done so well. Let's recognize that we've done so well. And it's so funny, but she says it really diffuses the tenseness of the situation and just almost like killing them with kindness, So I think that one's a pretty funny episode. I was laughing through it. It was hilarious. Yeah. So I generally love Adam Grant's episodes because he keeps it really real in a sense. It's so easy to relate to. He breaks down really complicated human emotions and behaviors and explores sort of like why we do what we do in a sense.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And they sound like incredible recommendations. And yeah, it also sounds like a few of the lessons that you've learned in those podcasts you can bring into this episode as well. They very much tie into personal resilience.
Yeah.
So yeah, really keen to hear what you have to say. But as for role models, who do you look up to either in your professional life or your personal life?
Okay, so this is going to sound like a cop-out, but I think I've been so lucky to have met lots of people that I work with and mentors in different aspects in my life, that I've been able to learn from so many of them. I don't see that there's just that one role model for me. I find that there's usually something that I can learn from the people that I work with, and I choose to focus on the positives that they bring. And I've realized and learned this from the years that I've been working, which is that even the most cranky person that you work with in the office, they have something to teach and something to share, and they have their experience to bring to the table. So I find myself really lucky that I have the opportunity to have worked with many talented people, many wonderful managers, and even the ones that were not as wonderful. I learned the kind of manager or the kind of leader that I don't want to be. So, there's always that one. But but I suppose if I had to maybe pick somebody popular that I think would be a great role model for young people, I always introduce Trevor Noah, the comedian, as someone who's really a wonderful role model, the way I see it. Maybe not to other people, but the way I see it, he's someone who's really engaged in the affairs of the world, right? Beyond his previous segment on what was that? Was it Saturday Night Live? No, the nighttime show, right?
I actually can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was the nighttime show. Oh no, like please don't like please haters, please don't comment on this. But yeah. So I think we all know who Trevor Noah is, the comedian. And beyond that, he wrote this book called Born a Crime. And it's also one of my favorites because he talks about how, you know, he sees his upbringing and he sees his life and working through apartheid, working through all of these issues, right? That might have meant he could very easily have grown up into a very different person. But because I think he grew up with this mindset of being able to reframe situations to maybe see different perspectives. He's able to talk about really deep issues like systemic racism, right? And to break it down, to see different angles, to discuss them in very respectfully. And yet also, I think one of the most beautiful thing about Trevor Noah is if you see his interviews and he's disagreeing with the other person, he does that with so much respect and so much compassion. And to be able to communicate his thoughts and his opinions so well. Like, I find that I love watching Trevor Noah's shows and listening to him engage with other people because I just feel like there's so much that we can learn from his techniques and the way that he presents himself. Yeah.
Yeah, those are definitely some good, solid reasons to find someone admirable. So thank you for sharing that. I feel like we got to know you a little bit better. So now let's get started on the interview, shall we?
Yeah.
For starters, how would you define personal resilience?
Well, I think personal resilience would be something that, to me, more of being able to work towards a goal, whatever goal that is. It could be a personal goal, an academic goal, whatever it is, right? And finding ways to meet your why in that sense. So that to me would be how I define personal resilience, finding the ways that work for you to meet your why.
Yeah. And how would you define prosocial behavior?
Prosocial behavior is really I think a combination of behaviors and actions meant to benefit other people. So this could be maybe in the traditional sense of things, right? You'll see things like cooperating in maybe group work, for example, or say sharing your lunch with a friend who forgot to bring theirs, helping a friend, helping someone in need, or even just being a comfort to other people. If you see your friend crying, you're not ignoring your friend, but actually going to comfort them, asking about them. Yeah, so these would be sort of like pro-social behaviors at work, right?
Yeah. And in your view, how do you think exhibiting pro-social behavior or engaging with pro-social behavior online affect our personal resilience?
Well, I think if you have some sort of a goal, right? Or if you have like for example, if you are somebody who's a little bit maybe more sensitive, and when we go online, and we talk about, say, maybe our achievements online, or I just did this, or hey, I just whatever it is, or I'm working towards this goal, and if you talk about it because you want to share, um, and online there's this, it kind of like casts everything that you share to the world, essentially, right? So ideally, you would see your friends come back to you and go like, oh, like validate you for your actions, or congratulate you, or just encourage you, like even if you went online and said, like I tried and I didn't get this, a friend might traditionally, a friend might be like, oh man, that sucks, but better luck next time. Well, let's just go get an ice cream, cheer you up. But online, it's just not the case. Mostly, you will see there will be people online who will encourage, who will who will be kind, maybe give you the validation that you're looking for in the moment. But unfortunately, we're seeing more people who, because of the anonymity online, they say things, right, that are not very nice, hurtful, things that are not very necessary, and so that's kind of like the dual nature, I feel, of how going online and sharing something that you've been doing could potentially have its drawbacks, especially if you're more of a sensitive person, or if you went online because you wanted some sort of validation, you wanted to truly connect with your friends. Yeah, but I've also seen times where the opposite has been true too, where if you go to a community with like-minded people, supportive people, then yeah, that online space can really help to encourage somebody to go further. You could really learn how to maybe perfect a certain technique, or what's missing, and really you could get really helpful feedback from the online community if they were in fact like-minded.
Yeah. That's what I do love about certain online communities, because it always feels like such a strong, tight-knit culture within the space, and everybody's kind of like almost on the same page. But I'm really curious to know, there has been a lot of talk about like cancel culture in the last few years, right? And with that comes like holding people accountable, and some people need to be held accountable for certain, I guess, indiscretions that they may have done to their audience. And sometimes in these cases, they tend to like turn it into, well, like, oh, people are just being mean online and sending me lots of threats. And, I won't say that doesn't happen at all, but what would you say is the distinction between, like, for example, holding someone accountable for their actions and anti-prosocial kind of behavior, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think there's a difference between accountability and shaming, because I feel like cancel culture is really about that, right? The whole shaming aspect to canceling somebody out of whatever the industry or the community, and And there's like this real vibe of like witch hunting or pitchforks, just kind of like coming at you. Sometimes I feel like people might feel like, depending on what someone has done, that might be warranted. And that, to me, is sort of like a little bit like virtue signaling, right? Where you're expressing your opinion or moral values that you align with, and you kind of amplify. You use the platform to amplify and cancel this other person because there's this sense of camaraderie, possibly this sense of like, oh, we're gonna validate each other and we're going to cancel this person because he or she did this and that and said this and that. Yeah, so there's a lot of shaming, I feel, behind that because you're not exactly educating that person on what they've done wrong or what they could have done better. And I think there's very little wiggle room for the restorative, which I feel should always be something that we allow anybody who's done wrong, the restorative, right? That restorative element to make things right again, to apologize, to take accountability for their actions. So while I agree that we shouldn't be bystanders if we see something, that shouldn't happen. But I think too, if we could just report to the platform and not make it about us and not make it about, and not take it personally. Oftentimes, too, I feel like the cancel culture is not really about the victims themselves. It's really about everybody else and like the "how dare you" kind of a thing, and it's overly dramatized. Yeah, so I'm not for that. I'm not for the cancel culture. I really do hope that if people want to report somebody, that they do so, directly to the platform. They don't have to advertise it. They don't have to make a big deal out of it, I suppose.
I do agree with that. I've always felt like, the average person isn't going to feel bad about what they did when they are being yelled at, if that makes sense. Like, if you were in a classroom and let's say like you were inadvertently dozing off because you didn't get enough sleep last night because you were busy, I don't know, doing your homework, and then you've like now shown the teacher this lack of respect, right? And the teacher starts yelling at you, hey, like you're in not so nice of a way, in a harsher way, saying like you're being really disrespectful here and you suck, basically. You're not going to then feel sorry for the teacher and feel like, oh, shucks, I've really like let Mr. So-and-so down. I do feel so bad. As the person being yelled at, you feel like, wow, like I've put in so much effort to like do my homework and I'm like behind on my sleep because of it. And I've got to get up at 5 a.m. to come to school. And now you're yelling at me. This sucks, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I do agree that, it's really important to hold people accountable for like any wrongdoings, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be so harsh. It doesn't have to be so abrasive, and you don't have like the shaming is just not necessary, and it's very counterproductive at the end of the day. But what would you say are some good ways to promote pro-social behavior online?
I think so. One of the things that I've seen tech companies do in promoting prosocial behaviors they've been, I think, aligning their guidelines. So they're sort of like their safeguarding guidelines. They're making things very clear to users. There's sort of expectations on how to use certain platforms, keeping in mind, you know, the age of their users, right, and that demographics. I think a lot of tech companies are now seeing that they have more of an accountability and a responsibility towards keeping everybody safe online. So I love that they've stepped up. And as for users themselves, I would say, yeah, I think one of the things too in promoting pro-social behavior is, would you say that to another person's face? You know, keeping in mind that there's a whole human being behind that screen that you're talking to, interacting to. You never know what the other person is going through. So I think just simply being mindful of that helps sometimes to reconnect with the other person behind the screen. I think other skills that are fundamental to having good communication and having good social skills, right? Listening skills, for example, being able to clarify and ask questions if you feel like you're misunderstanding somebody. Giving the benefit of the doubt, I think, goes a very long way as well. I feel like we are getting very quick to judge these days. So giving the benefit of the doubt is something that I personally use a lot in my line of work because, as a counselor, I go through a range of emotions as well. And sometimes something is posed to me in a way that sounds very aggressive, right? And so I have to go through a range of emotions and then kind of use these skills to really diffuse the situation and restore calm maybe, or just resolve conflict, right? So these are all skills I think we could all use in our day-to-day. It's just that we don't tend to use it online because of how fast-paced everything is, and where we convey everything with a emoji, or or everything's just conveyed with a range of emojis with zero context and no words, right? So because there's no body language, which makes up more than half of how I think how we make meaning, how we interpret things. So we have to rely on words. And I think just kind of giving a little bit more information to, sometimes, depending on who you're talking to, can be very helpful as well. So I've seen, just the other day, I saw this recipe online. So I've been so into Korean recipes recently, with the buldak ramen, and so someone posted their version of like a ramen hack or something, and it's just a recipe, right? But the comments were insane, and they were like, "Oh, that's not authentic. That's not how you do it," and there was no mention of any in the title. There was no mention that it was going to be authentic or it would be traditional, nothing. It was just ramen, right? This was a hack. And then there were other people defending this sort of like poor YouTube content maker who was just trying to make ramen and get views. And I was like, this is a little, like calm
extreme.
down, everybody. It's just ramen.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to just kind of like let yourself go. Yeah. So I suppose if we were all a little bit more mindful about using these skills, which we already do have, I think, and we hopefully use towards people that we love, our friends, and like face-to-face interactions. I hope that we bring these more into the online space as well, and not assume that people get with emojis and and with very little context, because that's not the case.
Yeah. And what's your advice for cultivating these skills and trying to apply them to our screen interactions as well? Our digital interactions as well. Because, genuine empathy and understanding is key to pro-social behavior and giving the
Right.
benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
But, like you said, it's people, we tend to forget when we're interacting through a screen. So, yeah, what's your advice for that?
I think schools are actually doing a lot to help our young people these days, because there's a lot in the pastoral care education as well as digital citizenry. That's all part of I hope every school's curriculum. And I see that, well, it's definitely part of my son's school's curriculum. And I love that a lot, because I get to, he brings home these ideas and topics, and we can talk about them, right? And I can then kind of reinforce that as a parent from home. So education is definitely very important. Now, if you're an adult and you're not in school anymore, you can still educate yourself, I think, with just kind of being aware of the kind of the vibe that's going on in that space, right? And I would say, again, if we want to be more pro-social, let's just like start small. Building that kind of situational awareness is very important. Making sure that we pause before we post something, right? That's often easier said than done. I think that's one of the first things that my son learned in his digital citizenry class, right? Other than, okay, what a good password is, and don't share your password, don't share your these things, but more than that, right? Like pause before you type anything or post anything, because you can't take that back. So that kind of education in terms of like the digital trail and how it affects other people, that's been so important. For me, I often do the pause, and then I sort of like think to myself, like, if I have to say something to this person, what is my intent? Is it really to be like, I'm right and you're wrong, how dare you? Or is it more of more to educate this person, to say, well, thank you for your opinion, but that's not actually the case here. Interestingly, I received an email from someone not too long ago who said that they knew a client that I was working with, and they were both users of one of these online Discord servers, which were meant to be sort of like a safe space for young people. So this person, I'm assuming, was pretty young, him or herself. I don't know, right? And this young person, in his or her email to me, shared that, oh, your client is saying this and that, and how could you let your client just go onto this server and say this and that, and it's traumatizing for other people, and they don't know how they've affected, and this and so there was a lot of blaming, there was a lot of aggression, and there was also a lot of this kind of outing my client, right? And I went through a range of emotions because I felt really sorry and upset for my client that they had probably come across this person who wasn't being very nice and who was very, very direct and not trying to be sensitive at all, which is kind of ironic, seeing that they were using a safe space together and it's supposed to be non-judgmental. And the first instinct was to email this person back and to say, like, dude, like, what's wrong with you?
What's your deal? Yeah.
Right. And just like, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all, right? Like, I don't need to know this. Like this is like it. I can't, control what my client does and whatnot. So after going through that whole range of emotions, I just kind of like went, okay, so what is the fundamental thing that I need to really respond to this person? And I think with every conflict, be it online or not, it's validating the person first. I think so. Yeah. So I emailed him or her back, and I was just like, yeah, I hear you. It must have been frustrating for you as a user to have to maybe feel like you were burdened with somebody else's emotions, and it sounds like that was a lot for you. And yeah, and it sounds as though like there might not have been anybody who was able to help you at that point in time, right? And then boundaries. I can't, something to the effect like I do not control, my client's behavior. No one can control their behavior but themselves. And then I shared with him like what they could do, right? So please report this to the platform if you feel like whatever, my client has shared is inappropriate. And I'm sure they will take notice and address your concerns as soon as possible, something like that. And and they never emailed back. So I hope that, it kind of deflated their aggression a little bit. And I hope that they understand that there are other ways to deal with conflict that doesn't require just a back and forth, just
like a
I'm
blame
right, you're
game.
wrong.
Yeah.
And people get really defensive, right? It's just the way we are. We don't like to be wrong. So I think recognizing the person behind the screen helps a lot. Pausing and then kind of validating the other person, right? And can go a very long way in diffusing that sort of conflict.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now let's move on to the practices and habits section. So what is a habit, activity, or exercise that you would recommend to people practicing to, engage in pro-social behavior or practice pro-social behavior online?
I think so. One of the things that I do recommend my clients is journaling and meditation, because it creates that sort of like mind-body connection, and it also allows you to have a little bit more space, to just think through your thoughts and to be reflective. And I think that that goes a very long way to promote better pro-social behavior, because pro-social behavior is all about empathy for others, right? And to be able to see others and to connect with others and to help others. But you can't do that if you don't have any, you don't either recognize that you have your own personal needs that make that a big barrier for you, or you just don't have that emotional battery to give to other people or to hold space for other people. So one of the things too, I just kind of I'm always kind of thinking about how to make meditation or just finding a calm space or me time easier, especially for my young clients, right? Because they're teenagers to young adults, and honestly, how many teenagers do you know who love meditation and journaling? Like,
Zero. I mean, I don't know many teenagers to begin with, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask.
Or young adults, for that matter, who will be like, yep, I love journaling or I love meditation. And so honestly, when I bring that up, I'm always met with like like that's such an old person thing. And I'll be like, wait, hang on, right? It can be done in other ways. And one of the things that I recommend younger people to listen to is Headspace. And they do really great short meditation episodes that are very relatable, and it's just a nice way to have you just pop on your earbuds and escape for like 5 minutes, right? They don't have anything beyond, I think, 10 minutes, which is wonderful. And that's something that I would recommend too, if you're a parent of a young child, to do it with them as well. That's been very helpful to just kind of calm your nervous system, to regulate your emotions. I think that's really one of the places to start. Someone who's regulated in their emotions tend not to take that into a digital space and go like, oh, like today I just want to see the world burn, I mean, there are these people, right? So, and we come across them and you just have to like roll your eyes and go, oh, not again. But yeah, and sometimes you wonder like, what happened to you that you're just like, you're so sad and you're so mean. Yeah.
Whenever there is someone in my life who exhibits some kind of like aggressive behavior like this, I love just going like, are you okay? What's going on with you? What's going on recently? And then they start going on about how like, somebody did something, and then it's like, okay, so we've gotten to the root issue. Like do you have to take it out on this person, like, you know, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I think like asking yourself that as well can be really useful. And that can be in conjunction with with journaling too. I mean, I have actually tried Headspace before. My
Yeah.
therapist got me to try it once. Yeah. And it didn't work so well for me. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
But I do love, like, my alternative is staring into space and kind of just like thinking thoughts, like stream of
Fantastic. Yeah.
consciousness. And I mean, that works for me. So it really depends on
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
who's doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So finding that thing that works for you, right? In regulating your emotions. I think that's essential. It's more essential than any other skill, I feel. Any communication skill, because I think once we understand ourselves and we can self-regulate and we can self-soothe, um, we are in a better, you know, excuse the pun, by headspace to uh, to be there for other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really enjoyed our discussion. But now let's move on to the open mic section. And this is your chance to talk about anything that you wish to talk about. And it doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is entirely yours. Please take it away.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to again thank you for this experience and for our wonderful chat today. I love that I've been given this opportunity to talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart. I've been working with young people for a very long time, and I see that you know, issues of prosocial behavior, of cyberbullying, they're just increasing. And I think as a worldwide trend, right, the mental health of young people are on a decreasing trend, and it's scary sometimes to be a parent, to be an educator, to be a counselor. It's scary because you're wondering what's happening to young people. You know, how are they going to find their way, and how are they going to grow into strong, resilient adults for a future that is pretty unknown, you know, to us at least. So I'm so glad that we have this platform to talk to your listeners, and hopefully there's a parent somewhere, there's an educator somewhere, there's a content maker somewhere, there's a student somewhere who's listening and going, wow, okay, you know, I can it all starts with me, basically. And yeah, and I'm hoping too that schools are doing more to educate our children from as young as possible, right? Like bring it into elementary, bring it into preschools even. And I just want to reiterate that if you're somebody who's going through a difficult time, who's going through, who's feeling like they have difficulties with their online presence or your online communities, remember that there are tools and resources and people that you can talk to, and don't feel scared to disengage and to take a break, right? And I think, as Marie, you mentioned earlier too, to be able, the power to be able to curate your online experiences today, that's also improving. So I'm feeling very hopeful for many of our young people who are digital natives, who are using all of these platforms for most of their connection on a day-to-day basis. I'm feeling very hopeful that a more positive online environment is very, very possible, right? With these improved features and as technology improves as well. So if you're a tech company listening, please ensure that your guidelines are up to speed and that your users know how to report inappropriate content or usage or users. But I think to us all, I'm just very happy that we can talk about this and really have a conversation about how interconnected we all truly are, and to be mindful going forward that that our behavior affects not just us but other people too. So in the spirit of Christmas, I hope everybody just takes a pause before emailing or posting anything to other people, right?
Yeah. That was an excellent use of the open mic. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today, Yvette. It's been such a pleasure. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
You can go to my website, www.onedeepbreath.co, or you can find me on LinkedIn under Yvette Lau.
Amazing. We'll link those in the show notes or the description wherever you're watching. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
You have been listening to Bouncing Back, the Personal Resilience Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website, pr.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.